The Pelicans want to trade Brandon Ingram. Brandon Ingram would like to be someplace else. Will a deal actually get done? And where does Brandon Ingram want to land? A big piece to this discussion. Where does BI want to go? That's what we're going to get into, because it appears that Brandon Ingram has specified some certain locations that he would like to be in. I'm Trevor Lane. This is the Basketball Bulletin. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. I'm telling you, you won't regret it. It's free. Hit that subscribe button. Joining me is Donnie Freeman. Donnie, we've talked a bit about Brandon Ingram already this week. He signed with Clutch Sports. Now we get a little bit of info on where he would like to ultimately wind up, or what type of environment he would like to wind up in. The more smoke we get here, I just don't think there's any way that Brandon Ingram stays in New Orleans past the trade deadline.
Yeah, the crazy thing is that he's kind of got the ability to steer where he wants to go due to the contractual situation. So I think that's where this is kind of crazy. And we'll see if he winds up landing on like a team that is a good team that's in position already to win, which that could be a really big bonus for that team that we're talking about.
So here's Shams Charania in an appearance on ESPN discussing this topic and where Brandon Ingram would like to wind up. Here we go.
We now welcome in our senior NBA insider, Shams Charania. Shams, over the weekend, you reported that Brandon Ingram signed with Clutch Sports. What does this mean for his future with New Orleans?
His future is now coming into greater focus in the coming weeks. And essentially, Malika, where this is going to go is it's going to end in a trade or an extension. In the offseason, the two sides were not able to come to an agreement, Ingram and the Pelicans, on an extension. He has now changed agents. He is with Clutch Sports, and we will know in the coming months before the NBA trade deadline in February where this will go. It is expected that extension conversations will occur at some point as we get closer and into January. But as of right now, I'm told Brandon Ingram wants to be a part of a winning, competitive environment situation. And the Pelicans have arguably the most competitive, deepest, winningest team that they've assembled on paper. We just have not seen their roster come together at all fully healthy this season, and they are 4-18 so far this season.
Yeah, essentially they won their first two games, and then they've won 2 games total since then, and that is not what we thought this Pelicans team would be coming into the season.
So Brandon Ingram, he says an extension or a trade. It's already been made clear that the Pelicans do not want to be the team to pay Brandon Ingram on his next contract, assuming it's anywhere near a max deal. So the only way I could see this becoming an extension is if the rest of the NBA also is dead set, tells Brandon Ingram, hell no, we are not going to be the team to give you anywhere near max money either, which maybe isn't out of the question under the new CBA, Donnie. It's possible that the message from the rest of the league is simply, you're not going to get that money here either. And then maybe he winds up staying in New Orleans, but I still think it's more likely that he winds up getting moved.
Yeah, the craziest thing about the CBA is that that's a contract they wouldn't have second-guessed giving him prior to the CBA. Sure. They would have just been like, all right, here, if you want it, sure, we'll just, invest here. We've seen other guys get that same exact contract going forward, similar stature guys, and they gave it to them, So that's where things are kind of crazy. But yeah, look, we talked about previously, he's going to have to come off of something here. He's going to have to give something back here, because I feel like he's going to get shut out. I don't think that he's going to get any opportunity to get the money that he's truly looking for here. And if he's got to hang around mid-30s, low 30s, 30 even, something like that, I mean, that's not the worst case scenario as opposed to the 40, 50 that he's looking for otherwise. And ultimately, I think, Sham said he wants to be in a winning situation, but he also said that, this team is the best rendition that we've seen. They just haven't been able to get healthy, which is true. I mean, they made a pretty big move by adding in Murray earlier in the season. And it's just kind of crazy the way that this team just exploded. And one of the things we've talked about a lot also is, Brandon Ingram getting traded, things like that, but also just the health here with this team and the concerns around Zion. Like, what are your options from there? And ultimately with Brandon, I think a lot of what they decide to do there could be dependent on Zion. I think that it maybe is a situation where you want to, hold on to Zion. You want to keep building. You're not interested in pivoting. You're just going to say, all right, this season is what it is, but we want to keep this same exact core the way it is. Or you can wind up shipping out Brandon and maybe just resetting it all. There's obviously an in-between there where you do one of the things and keep the other guy here. But I think that that's one of the things that they probably will be considering.
So, Donnie, the Pelicans right now, when we talk about he wants to be in a competitive environment, and let's talk about where that could be. in just a second here, but just to kind of put things in perspective for New Orleans, look, I hate seeing this for the Pelicans because this is a talented roster, but they've been permanently injured. There is still no return anywhere in sight for Zion Williamson right now. That even came out earlier today. But just do the math, right? The Pelicans are 22 games into the season. That means there are 60 games remaining. Of those 60 games, in order to hit 46 wins, which was the minimum to make the play-in in the West, 60 games left, they have to win 42 out of 60 games to make the play-in in the Western Conference if we set that same line as last season to make the play-in. And that's not the playoffs, that's just to make it to the play-in. Time is running out here on the Pelicans. Man. I think and that's it exactly. So I think that's where I'm at too. Is it impossible? No, it's not impossible. Is it likely? No, I think they're already too deep. So if this is not a competitive environment right now this season, where would Brandon Ingram wind up? So looking at the other teams, then I think because as you said, he can control his landing spot because all he has to do to any team that's interested in trading for him, they're going to say, hey, Brandon, you going to re-sign here? All he has to do is say, nope, I don't want to be there. And they're going to say, oh, cool. Well, we don't want to trade for half a season of you and then have you walk away for nothing. So which teams make sense then as landing spots for BI if I think we would have to assume that all of the non-playoff teams or even non-play-in teams are probably eliminated?
Yeah.
Who makes sense?
I mean, I think anybody it's kind of tricky. I mean, like he wants to go to a winning situation, but the reality is that some of these winning teams, they don't have the ability to get this guy. They don't have the ability due to, the way that the CBA works to match the salary, to do these things to get him in the organization in the first place. So that's going to just innately eliminate these guys. But I think a team that could be pretty good that we also talked about earlier is the Spurs. I think the Spurs are kind of looking for more pieces to surround Wemby with. And I think that would be a good spot for him to land. And with him there, they could take the jump, going forward. And I think that they have a lot of good wing depth there too, that he could plug in as well. And maybe the Clippers are a team that he could fit pretty well into and, it help them go to the next level potentially. I think there's teams here. It's just, do they have the ability?
And the Clippers have PJ Tucker's expiring contract. The Spurs, I think that makes some sense. Really, I don't know if it's like a top tier, like if you're the Houston Rockets, are you disrupting your team who right now are playing great basketball to go get Brandon Ingram? Certainly he could fit with that team, but are you disrupting things right now when things are going well? Or would it be more you're interested in somebody that would definitely put you over the top? I don't know if Brandon Ingram is that guy in the eyes of the Rockets or not. So there's some question, but like the Thunder, could the Thunder go get him? Sure, but does he fit with what the Thunder? Yeah, do they need to? Does he fit with what they're doing? Maybe not. You can argue the same thing with, I think Memphis is actually a really interesting fit for him if you can make a move with Marcus Smart. But then do the Pelicans want Marcus Smart? They reportedly don't want to take back any type of significant salaries coming back. So that might get difficult. But I think it's those teams that are not quite that top tier team, but more those teams that are maybe one player away. What about like the Orlando Magic? Could they be a team that adds? Now, again, the problem is you already have Franz, you already have Paulo on the wings.
Yeah, I'm not
so again, the more we go through, the Milwaukee Bucks, they can't aggregate salaries in a trade. Atlanta, maybe, but is that a good? Is that really a competitive? I know they're 500, but is that the kind of team he wants? I don't know.
I guess. Is it Miami like always?
Miami?
Indiana could be a fun one.
Indiana would be interesting. Indiana, I think, out of all the teams we're talking about, Indiana may make the most sense. Just from a perspective of being a team that needs one more piece to really make that push into the upper echelon. So if we're, the Nets, the Hornets, the Raptors, the Sixers, obviously, who knows what's going to happen with the Sixers, but the Wizards, assuming those teams are out, I think it's going to wind up being a team like an Indiana, maybe a Miami. We go down, we look at a Clippers, somebody like that Brandon Ingram winds up going to, because those are the teams that could sell themselves on this guy's going to put us over the top. I think the true top tier teams, if he's talking about I want a winning environment, I don't know if those teams are going to disrupt things by adding him.
Yeah, I think the Raptors could be fun as well. I kind of think this year is like a gap year for them. I think they're going to be really good next year. So I think that could be a thing. But I got to ask you.
Yeah,
we've got a lot of Laker fans here. Would you do that trade for BI on this current team?
So I think he's a good player. I don't think he fits what the Lakers need necessarily, unless they go with my plan and you start scaling back LeBron and his minutes and his games. Then you've got Brandon Ingram stepping back home in LA, back to the team that drafted him in a bigger role.
D'Lo part 2.
Yeah, exactly. And ironically, it would probably be D'Lo would be one of the pieces going out in order to get him. So I don't necessarily hate it. I wouldn't completely dismiss it. But I think when we look at specifically what ails the Lakers, does Brandon Ingram check those boxes? Probably not. So I think there's probably better paths forward for them, but it really depends on the value. The value they need NBA talent at a very clear level there. And then the big picture question: how many of these teams get eliminated simply because they don't want to be the team also to give Brandon Ingram his next contract? That's the other, the final piece to this that's going to be tricky. But I think by the time we get to the trade deadline, somebody will have been interested. Somebody will say, you know what, maybe we are a Brandon Ingram away, and we'll see a deal get done. That's my belief here and what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I said in the previous video when we talked about him switching agencies, is that's one of his best bets, is somebody looking at it towards the deadline and saying, you know what, I think if we get Brandon Ingram, we could win a championship.
Yeah.
I don't know who that team is. I don't know what position they'd be in to make that decision, and if they've even got the ability to do so. But if they can, I think that's one of the ways that he can get out of here. But I also, honestly, I really think there's a decent chance that he just is here at the end of the year. It could reach a point where it's hard to move him unless you're just getting rid of him just for the sake of it, which you don't have to do because he is an expiring deal. You don't have to do that. If
there's no team that wants to give him his next contract and he says firm, I'm not taking less, then that would be a path towards no deal getting done. Yeah. But everybody let us know in the comments section, what's the best landing spot for Brandon Ingram? Again, we found out he specifically wants a competitive and winning environment. So with those parameters, and again, he can effectively shut down any trade. So with those parameters of Brandon Ingram only wants to go to a competitive winning environment, where's the best location for him? Let us know in the comment section, and go check out our latest video on De'Aaron Fox and why execs are already circling the Sacramento Kings, thinking there may be a deal to be struck to steal away Fox from Sacramento. Go check that out right now.